Hi guys, David O'Sullivan here, and in this video I'm talking about why I'm not the biggest fan of horror. And I thought I'd do this video because I've never really reviewed a horror film, and I thought it would get to a point where you'd think, why does David never really review horror movies? So I thought this video would be a good idea just to explain to you why I don't review horror movies, why I don't actually go out and watch horror movies, and why I'm not the biggest fan of horror. Now first off, I'll start off by saying I don't think all horror movies are bad. I don't hate horror as a genre. There are some horror films that I think are really good, are really great films. I'm just personally not the biggest fan of the genre. It's probably my least favourite genre because I'm not that big of a fan of rom-com either, but there are some rom-coms that I really like, some more unconventional romantic comedies like Her, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, 500 Days of Summer, all great films by the way, so if you haven't seen any of those, check them out. But with horror, I'm just not the biggest fan of the genre. I prefer horror when it's combined with other genres. I'll get onto this a little bit later. I like it when horror is combined with other genres, but as far as straight up, full-on, pure horror is concerned, I'm just not that big of a fan of that. And this video, I think I'll just explain why I'm not the biggest fan of horror. And the first reason, and probably the biggest reason as to why I'm not a fan of horror, is that I just don't find being scared entertaining. And I know a lot of people really like horror films because they really like being scared and they get a thrill out of it. For me, one of the biggest reasons why I watch films is to be entertained. I like escaping into some world and having fun and enjoying myself, and I can't enjoy myself watching a horror film. I can't be entertained when I'm scared. You know, I get all uptight and anxious and nervous and wound up and anxious enough in real life. When I go to the movies, I just want to escape and have fun and be entertained, and I can't be entertained if I'm scared. I just don't find being scared entertaining. As I said, I know a lot of people do get a thrill and do get excited by being terrified, but I just don't find that a comfortable, enjoyable viewing experience. I just like being entertained and have fun, and I don't find being scared entertaining. I don't really go and see horror films at the cinema. I think the last one I saw was probably Woman in Black. It was alright, you know. It wasn't actually that scary, to be honest with you, but the first time, I just that anticipation of you don't know what to expect, and I just can't relax and enjoy myself and watch it because I'm all uptight and anxious and nervous. I don't know what the hell is going to happen. Seriously, this is me when I'm watching a horror film in the cinema. I just can't relax and enjoy myself and be entertained and have fun when I'm watching a horror because I just don't find being scared entertaining. And next up, and this is a controversial one, but I just don't think horror is one of the best genres of film. And granted, there's a lot of great horror films I haven't seen, but I just think when you compare it to other genres, I think there's so many other genres that are just so much better, I feel, that can do so much more, and they have a lot of kind of sub-genres to them. And with horror, I think I just don't know. I've yet to see a horror film where I've gone, wow, that is an amazing film, but it just happens to be a horror film. I mean, there's probably a lot that I haven't seen, and granted, I'm not the biggest fan of horror, so there's probably a lot of greats that I haven't seen that are really good films, but I still feel like I wouldn't really like them and enjoy them because I just, as I said on the first point, I just can't be entertained watching a horror film. I like when horror is combined with other genres, but as far as pure, straight up, full-on horror is concerned, I just don't think there's really much to it when you compare it to other genres. I know there's a lot of people that love horror. I know there's a lot of undoubtedly great horror films. I just don't think it's one of the best genres. Again, it's my third point here, is that I can't enjoy horror films if they don't have a sci-fi or supernatural element to them. And what I mean by that is, I can enjoy a horror film if there's a kind of fantasy element to it. I can get into it and I can enjoy myself and have fun if there's some kind of supernatural element to it. If it's a monster movie, for example, if it's got some kind of sci-fi element to it, if it's, you know, supernatural, if it's dark fantasy, if it's too realistic, I can't enjoy myself and have fun. But when there is a supernatural sci-fi element to it, I can get into it. I don't know if I can explain myself here. It's just, I feel like if there's a fantasy element to a film, as far as horror is concerned, obviously with the likes of drama, it's good when it's more realistic for me. But with horror, I just don't like it when it's too realistic because I can't just have fun and enjoy myself because it just, I don't know, it's just too realistic. But then if there's a sci-fi element or a supernatural element, if it's a monster movie, a dark fantasy or something like that, I can enjoy myself because I love fantasy, I love sci-fi, so there's a fantastical element to it. I can get into that and I can enjoy that. It's just if a horror movie is just too realistic and too much like real life or the real world, I just can't get into that. And that is really the main reasons why I'm not a fan of straight up, full-on, pure horror movies. But as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I do really like horror when it's combined with other genres, and it's interesting because it's not as if I hate horror all round altogether. That's not at all. I do actually like horror, but only when it's combined with other genres. For me, like comedy, I think they work best when they're combined with other genres. I have the same problem with comedy. I'm not the biggest fan of just straight up full-on comedies, but I do really like comedies when they're combined with other genres. And it's odd because I'm not the biggest fan of straight up comedies, and I'm not the biggest fan of straight up horrors. But when comedy and horror are put together, that's like one of my favourite genres, black comedy, like comedy, horror. Seriously, black comedy is one of my favourite genres, and it's odd, seeing as though I don't really like horror and I'm not the biggest fan of comedies, but when they're put together, I just really like that. I don't know why. I think it's because straight up horror is just a bit too, you know, just serious for me, and when it's played too seriously, I can't get into it. And comedies, I just don't think comedy really works that well when it's on its own, especially if it's not that good of a film. But when they're put together, I think it really works because the comedy aspect lightens the horror bit up, and then the horror bit kind of makes the comedy more edgy. And I don't know, I just really like black comedies. For example, one of my favourite films is American Psycho, and that is essentially a black comedy, a kind of horror comedy, and I love that film. And yeah, going back onto horror, I like genre hybrids of horror when it is, you know, combined with other genres. So comedy horror, black comedy, sci-fi horror, Alien for example, action horror, or horror thrillers. And thriller is actually an interesting one, because even though I'm not the biggest fan of horror, thriller is probably the genre that's most similar to horror, and I love thrillers. Thriller is one of my favourite genres, but for me the difference between a horror and a thriller is, whereas I can't really be entertained and have fun with a horror, I can really get into a thriller. Thrillers really get me invested and engaged, and they really thrill me and excite me, and I can get really involved and pulled into the film. With a horror, I can't really get into it. Thrillers I find really entertaining, and I really can get into that. So yeah, it's odd really, because I'm not the biggest fan of horror, yet thriller is quite similar, and I love thrillers. So yeah, it's quite weird. I don't know if any of you have the same kind of experience with a genre. There's a genre you don't particularly like, but then you do like it when it's combined with another genre. I don't know if that's just me or not, but it's odd that I don't like horrors on their own, but I do like it when it's combined with other genres. Comedy horror, action horror, sci-fi horror, horror thriller. So what I'm really getting at here is, even though I'm not the biggest fan of horror, I don't hate it as a genre. There are some horror movies I like monster movies, I like kind of supernatural, kind of sci-fi, fantasy horror movies. I like horror when it's combined with other genres, so black comedy, horror thrillers. It's just, I don't know if horror really holds up as a genre onto itself. And I know there's a lot of people out there that love horror movies, and 2016 was a really great year for horror. We had The Witch, we had Lights Out, we had Don't Breathe, even Ouija 2 is supposed to have been pretty good, but I didn't really see any of those films. I feel like Don't Breathe would be my kind of horror film. I haven't seen Don't Breathe yet, but from what I've heard, it's kind of more of a suspense thriller kind of horror film as opposed to a straight up horror. So I feel like that would be my kind of horror film. Let me know in the comments down below if you've seen Don't Breathe, if you think that would be a horror movie that I would like based on what I've said. And also, what do you think I should do as far as horror is concerned? If there's any films that you think are really great horror films, any horror films that you think I'd really like, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to know what you think, what horror movies you think I should see based on what I've said. Any kind of like horror movies that you think will really get me into horror. I don't know, because I can't get into horror when it's on its own. As I said, I love it when it's combined with other genres, but just straight up horror, I'm just not the biggest fan. And there we have it. That wraps up my video of why I'm not a fan of horror. Speaking of horror, it's not really a horror film, but Split is coming out soon. I'm going to be seeing that hopefully and then doing a review for that. I don't really see that as a horror, it's more of a psychological thriller, I think. I mean, I haven't seen it yet. Psychological thriller is another genre I really like. But yeah, so I'm going to be seeing Split. I'm also going to be seeing Jackie, Lion, hopefully, so look out for reviews for those. I'm hopefully going to try and get reviews for all of those out if I can. I'm a little bit busy at the moment, but I'm going to try and see those 3 films and do reviews for those 3 films if I can. But yeah, that just about wraps this video up. Let me know in the comments down below if there's any horror movies that you think I'd like, or there's any genres that you don't really like particularly, or, you know, what are your experiences with this kind of thing? Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, if you like this and you haven't already, be sure to click subscribe to see more. But for now, I've been David O'Sullivan. I'll see you next time.